Okay, so we'll make a start. Welcome back to the ANU UPNG seminar series for this month. The ANU UPNG seminar series, it's part of the partnership between the ANU Crawford School of Public Policy and University of Papua New Guinea, and it's supported by the PNG Australia Partnership. Our presentation for today will be on the topic Electrifying Papua New Guinea, Challenges and Opportunities for Decentralized Solar Power. Our speakers today are Christian Lohberger, who is the president for the PNG Solar Energy Association, and also Professor Martin Davies, who is a professor at the Washington and Lee University and a visiting fellow at the Development Policy Center. Please join me in welcoming Christian. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. And I'm just checking, is this seminar going to be recorded? Because we've had a bit of interest from people who'd like to see it. So anyway, I trust that it will be.
Yep, hey, Christian, yeah, it's going to be recorded. Yep.
Okay, fantastic. So yeah, thanks for the introduction, Bobby, and everyone's been scrambling to get the IT set up here, and I think we are good to go. I will just scroll through now to the title slide, and that is Electrifying Papua New Guinea, Challenges and Opportunities for Decentralised Solar Power. This is a presentation based on a paper that Professor Martin Davies and I wrote earlier in the year, and it is basically to try and address some of the major electricity shortages, particularly in rural areas of Papua New Guinea, and look at some potential solutions based on examples from other countries and other regions. But where we will start, I guess, just a little introduction about myself. My name is Christian Lohberger. I'm from PNG, born and raised, and I run a small solar business here. We mostly do commercial and industrial solar, but we do also a little bit of rural solar as well. Done a couple of mini grids, a couple of off-grid systems, and increasingly we are doing much more work with batteries and occasionally with electric vehicles as well, which are really just a big battery on wheels, but I digress. And of course, Professor Martin Davies, also Mangila Port Moresby, grew up here in PNG, and I believe Martin is currently in the USA, but we collaborate often and speak daily basis. So I'll go to the first slide, and I can see that I'm going to try and maximize this so I don't have the toolbar at the top, but no, I can't do it, and I don't know how, so I'm not going to mess with it. All right. So basically, Papua New Guinea, as a lot of us know, or maybe some of those online may not know, we do have a electricity crisis. We have approximately 15% of the population has access to regular and reliable electricity, and this places us at one of the lowest rates of electrification in the world. It's basically worse than most of Africa and least developed countries. And some of the reasons for that is because PNG is a very large country. It's approximately the size of Sweden or France in land area, but does not have the infrastructure. It's got very few roads, does not have power lines, and the human development index is quite low. We don't have a big pool of engineers or technicians or people that can contribute to building out the grid, or indeed to build out the demand for the grid, which would be businesses and infrastructure. And the main electricity provider in Papua New Guinea is, of course, PNG Power Limited, which is currently, depending on who you talk to, it's insolvent. It is a state-owned entity. It's 100% owned by Kumu Consolidated Holdings, which is the government-owned holding company. And as a result for that, it owes the independent power producers. It's got a handful of IPPs who generate electricity and provide power for the grid, but also PPL does produce some of its own power. But basically, these IPPs are owed a lot of money. Again, depending on who you talk to, it can be up to $1 billion kina, give or take a few $100 million, I suppose. And the end result is because PPL is an unreliable with payments, you do not have any access to sovereign guarantees for these IPPs. The government's not going to guarantee payments. Our development partners are not going to guarantee payments. So it is quite a high risk environment to invest in. And that's sort of the business environment is risky, but also the physical environment is very challenging as well. We don't have a national grid. We have basically three kind of separated grids. We have the Port Moresby grid, which runs, in the capital city, the largest city, and parts of Central Province. Then we have, and that's probably in terms of capacity, I think it's the largest grid. It's 150 to 200 megawatts. Then we have the Ramu grid, which is in the north of the country, and that runs between Lae and the Highlands. And that is quite long. It's much, in terms of distance it covers and area it covers, it's much bigger than the Port Moresby grid, but I think it is quite a bit smaller, maybe half the capacity in terms of megawatts. And then we have the Gazelle system in the New Britain Island, or in East New Britain province, and that runs in Kokopo and Rabaul. And that is smaller again, but it's still a grid. And every other location, community around Papua New Guinea that is not connected to these three grids is basically running its own standalone mini grid. And you'll find that all of the regional and provincial capitals like Alatau, Vanamo, Daru, Madang, oh no, actually, sorry, I think Madang's on the Ramu, but Kavieng, Manus, they're all running mini grids, and generally these mini grids are essentially probably a diesel generator or a couple of large diesel generators and a distribution grid that puts it, the power around to the immediate township. And this is quite old infrastructure. It was, in many cases, installed around independence or even pre-independence. And it has suffered from the last few decades from lack of investment, and it hasn't had probably the care and the maintenance that it requires. So as a result, you have big reliability issues, frequent blackouts, frequent instability in the grid, and another structural barrier is, if you're wanting to expand these grids or change them or adapt them, you need to understand that Papua New Guinea, in terms of how to own and buy and sell land, it all comes under customary land ownership. So you don't have the typical Western concept of someone owns land, someone can sell land, and then there's a clear transfer of title. In PNG, it's often customary land, and it may be owned by the community or the tribe or the village. And can be very difficult to even understand or ascertain who exactly is the landowner and who has the rights to buy or sell or develop that land, which, as you would see with projects like solar farms that do require a lot of land, or even hydro projects that do require easement access for poles and distribution, without clarity over who owns the land. This is a significant barrier as to how you can develop it. On to the next slide. So the PNG government hosted APEC in 2018. We had all of the world leaders here. And one of the outcomes of that was a partnership was announced with our development partners, New Zealand, Australia, the USA, and Japan. And together with PNG, the plan was to focus on electrification and to try and expand the grid from the approximately 15% of people who had access to around 70% by 2030, so 5 years from now. Bear in mind, this was announced in 2018, so we're already 7 years into it. And I am afraid to announce that we haven't really made a lot of great progress in the last 7 years. You'll see on the right there, there's a bar chart, and you see the blue bars are the population growth. So we're starting off at, I think, 8 million people population. Now today in 2025, we're about 9, but there is a bit of debate about really what is an accurate figure for the country's population. So we could be as high as 10 or 11 or even higher. And the orange bar there shows that what is the electrification rate when we started in 2018 or 2019 there, which would have been the first year. And the growth of the orange bar is showing that what we need to grow the electricity sector to reach that 70% by 2030. So you see 2019, we're still there at about 15% electrification. And, if this had been growing as it should have by 2025 this year, we should be about 4 times that. So maybe, close to 50% electrification when you bear in mind the population's growing. But we are not really at that point. We haven't really budged from the initial 2019 starting point. And in fact, we may be facing even greater population growth than was anticipated. So, I think the best case scenario is we're probably standing still on electrification, but depending on the population figures, maybe we're not even doing that well. We could be going backwards. So what Martin and I did in developing this paper was we decided, well, look, the grid is not really a chance for expansion because the geographical, cultural, economic barriers, but there has been great developments in off-grid solar, with batteries, with solar panels. It's getting cheaper, it's getting easier to use. And so maybe the electrification strategy should really specifically focus on this type of technology. And we believe that this would give the best access for the grid, and that, sorry, not the grid, but for access to electricity to complement the grid and add to it where the grid cannot go, and that it would be a much better partner for the realities of the geography and governance in PNG. And why does it work? Why did we choose this technology for PNG? It's because, I'm going to see if I can do this. No, okay. Well, we chose this technology because it is a tropical country. We have abundant sunshine here. Even in the rainy season, we still got very good returns on investment for solar. As solar panels and particularly the balancer system and the batteries get cheaper, this becomes a much more viable option than it was even 5 years ago. And because the nature of solar is modular, it can be built out very, very fast. So you can, get a solar project that accommodates a single household, right up to building solar farms that can power entire towns or cities or villages. So that modularity has made it very easy to use, very ameliorates the risk for investment. And it's also quite resilient as well, because solar is, it's very few moving parts. It's a simple technology. It's easy to install, and it's easy to repair. So it's generally more reliable than using the grid. So if we're looking at building solar, then who's going to be the customers? Who's out there? Well, the current demand for the whole country is for off-grid is about 280 megawatts of established demand, and this is people who already have access to electricity, not necessarily people who would want access to electricity, which would be much higher. And of that roughly 280 megawatts, quite a lot of that is in resource projects, so mines, agriculture, I think there's some processing plants for fisheries and agriculture and that sort of thing. But certainly there are a bunch of mines that are heavily using diesel, and they are probably taking up the most of that production. In terms of what does a household or a community use for power, until several years ago they were spending a lot on kerosene lanterns, and this was, I guess, the easiest and most achievable way to get particularly lighting, but it came with its own risks. Kerosene puts out fumes, which can cause health issues, and it also is a fire risk. And you saw quite a few fires and injuries and fatalities because kerosene lanterns would be knocked over. But the recent skyrocketing growth of particularly solar lanterns and solar home systems has very rapidly pushed the kerosene lantern market out of the priority that it once had. So now, if you travel around rural PNG, you will see that particular bright white light that is from LEDs powered by solar, and this has been a very fast, very rapid energy transition from kerosene to solar lanterns with LEDs and lithium batteries, and I think it's one of the most sort of successful examples of energy transition in the region, if not the world. But essentially, all of these people, they do want electricity. They recognise the benefits. They recognise the development that it can bring to the communities. So I think that if you gave them access to solar power, solar electricity, there is a huge demand there, and we just need to work out what is the model, what is the way that we could get that to them. But solar, of course, is it's a fairly, it's not a brand new technology, but certainly recent developments have been very, very fast, and there are still some residual risks that you need to accommodate. And one of the key risks, I suppose, is the financial risk. Solar is getting a lot cheaper, but it's still, a fairly expensive. And the key here is it's an upfront cost. The cost of solar, unlike a kerosene lantern, where it's a trivially cheap lantern to buy, and then you just have ongoing purchases of kerosene. Most of the cost of a solar project, a solar lantern, solar home system is in the initial capital expense. So you're talking, maybe several $100s, and this price is declining fast. But you're looking at least a couple of $100 to really kit out a house with proper solar. And if you want a larger solar AC system, with panels on the roof and an inverter and some larger scale batteries, you're looking at several thousand. And then, if you're in a remote area, rural PNG, it can be even much more expensive than that. And of course, that is a finance gap. We don't have a great pay-as-you-go model here. The microfinance banks are still fairly nascent. They haven't reached the scope and the large scale that you may see in places like the Indian subcontinent and Africa. And in fact, there is really a weaker economy in general in Papua New Guinea. In rural areas, people are mostly subsistence farmers. They may not have a bank account. They may not have access to the internet, and they may not even have access to the basic building blocks to establish their identity to open a bank account, even if they had access to a bank. So, there's major financial and social obstacles there. And there are some technical risks. We don't have a large pool of skilled technicians or electricians to help with the rollout of solar. So any solutions you have do need to be fairly easy and on the level of some, an uneducated or semi-educated village technician can access and install and operate and maintain without necessarily having great access to online resources or technical support from larger factories or suppliers. And of course, there is a big regulatory gap. I'll go into this a bit more later, but PNG does need an off-grid regulations. We have developed some, but they, for reasons that are not always clear, the off-grid regulations have not been approved by the cabinet. So, and this inability to get the regulations approved and made legal has made it difficult to invest in the sector. And of course, there's social risks, the theft, the vandalism, the things that can make it difficult to invest in rural and underdeveloped PNG for any reason are also going to affect solar as well. So next, I'm going to talk about some of the examples of that we looked at in the paper. And how do I get my notes up on here? Okay, I don't, no, that's not it. Okay, so I will just have to talk about the Bangladesh Solar Home System Program, and that is developed since 2003 by the Infrastructure Development Company. Bobby, is it possible to get? So I've got notes on the slides here, but how do I get them up?
So you send us the PDF file.
Yeah. Okay. And the PDF.
I think you should have PowerPoint. Then you should have the notes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I have that on my laptop, but yeah, maybe if I do that.
Yeah.
Sorry to everyone. Just bear with us. The apparently there was a IT guy that went missing, but so we trying to do this on the fly. But essentially, Bangladesh was in a similar condition to PNG, 20, 30 years ago. Very low access to electricity. And now I can bring up the PowerPoint and okay. Yeah, so Bangladesh's IDCOL program, it will show how to scale off-grid solar fast. It was launched in 2003 and it tackled the upfront cost barrier with microcredit. Households made a small down payment and repaid that over 2 to 3 years, while IDCOL, the Infrastructure Development Co, which I believe is a Bangladeshi state-owned entity, it would be able to channel soft loans and grants to vetted partners such as NGOs and firms within the solar sector. Crucially, IDCOL enforced technical standards. Oh, and I see we have some people coming in. That's great. Some students. It enforced technical standards. It trained the technicians and helped monitor the installation so the systems would work, the installations went well, and the trust grew. So it was a kind of a vertically integrated program, which is great. And then the donors and the Bangladeshi government committed roughly 700 million in the first decade, and repayments were set around what families were already spending on kerosene and batteries. And the results were great. Over 4 million systems installed by 2018, so giving more than 20 million people access to electricity that didn't have it before. But the takeaway here was that you had a dedicated financing intermediary that came with a quality assurance program, plus long-term public donor backing, and then it had all of the different ingredients that you needed to reach electrification at a national scale. Now, another case study that we looked at in our paper was India, and I think the key thing for India was that they had focused on how do we turn solar and electrification into something that can produce a revenue. So India paired a massive grid extension along with targeted solar mini grids in areas where power was weak or absent. Okay. Government support from the Indian government, you had capital subsidies of 30 to 50%, so quite high, but clear technical standards and state rules for the grid arrival, which would reduce the risk. So investors would have some consistency there, and they knew that if the state would support them if they wanted to connect. But mini grids would focus on productive uses like water pumps, rice mills, and cottage industries that could grow the economy in rural areas. And you see there on the slide there is an image of oh, sorry, I'm trying to drive two computers here. I haven't changed the slide. And now, how do I? Okay, how do I change this slide? Can you change to the next slide for me, please? My apologies. Oh. Yeah, okay, so here we have, excuse me, thank you, Bobby. Yeah, so yeah, the Indian mini grids, they focused on pumps, rice mills, cottage industry, something where village communities could lift their incomes and build a willingness to pay, build an economy around the arrival of electricity. So by the late 2010s, India had near universal household connections, which is a great achievement. And I think the lesson here is that, you need a strong policy direction, smart and targeted subsidies, and particularly community engagement to make mini grids really complement the grid. And I think that community engagement is based on economic factors. So you could see that, people have an incentive to make money. Now, the next case study we looked at was East Africa, basically Kenya and Tanzania. And this showed how the rapid adoption and growth of mobile phone banking systems, so being able to share money, consume money, or make payments and transfer cash through the mobile phone network. So here you saw that Kenya and Tanzania could show how this business model innovation could be used to unlock off-grid solar. Pay-as-you-go-home systems through mobile money apps like M-Pesa would let families buy power in very small installments, while also securing the asset. So they would hold on to the asset and maintain it, make sure it was safe and looked after, while they were paying it off incrementally through their mobile phone. Firms like M-Kopa, Zola, Mobisol, and Phoenix would scale fast. And in fact, M-Kopa, which I think is a Kenyan brand, sold 600,000 units very rapidly. And this really helped Kenya lift its household access to electricity from around 25% to almost 75%. So again, this is sort of the trajectory that Papua New Guinea would like to follow. Mobile money has not been quite as successful here for various reasons, which I won't digress into. But I think the lessons from East Africa are that widespread use of mobile money, low import duties on equipment, and high quality standards like is provided by the Lighting Africa, along with strong impact and inputs from venture capitalists and investment funds, can build an ecosystem where mobile money and solar complement each other and turn into quite a great revenue area. In the Pacific Islands, we have actually, some of our neighbours, such as Fiji, Tonga, and Vanuatu, have had some solar programs, going on 20, 30 plus years now. And, early days for that, they saw mixed results with some technical challenges, the maintenance and and able to replace the parts was difficult. But then they shifted to a fee-for-service model managed by utilities. In a way, I guess they had some success with the pay-as-you-go model there as well. Plus really trying to formalise the technical support with institutionalized technician visits and a strong maintenance culture really helped and has helped these our neighbours here to build out and establish strong solar programs. And I think the lesson here is that you really do need strong technical support. You can have all of the investment and all of the demand, but without the electricians, the engineers, the project managers to develop this stuff, it won't last very long. Okay. And now I'm just going to go on to recent developments. And it's a little bit small there on the screen, but you'll see on the right there is a bunch of line charts, and they're all basically going straight up. Huge growth. And this is showing what's been happening in Africa just this year. So there's 20 African countries, and they're all importing enormous amounts of solar panels. So up this year until June 2025, 20 African countries have hit record imports of Chinese solar panels, and they're almost all from China. And those, hockey stick lines you see there on the right, different countries: Nigeria, Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia, Mozambique, Zambia, basically skyrocketing demand, skyrocketing imports of solar panels, showing a huge domestic demand. It's a broad-based surge across the whole continent. This is not a one-off. There's all sorts of different economies, societies going on here. But I think what they all have in common is that in 2024, the price of solar PV modules absolutely crashed through the floor. And now with the advent of tariffs in America and, the European Union and other countries kind of getting a bit wary of letting Chinese products, it looks like we might have a solar glut. In fact, we probably do have a solar glut across the globe. Really, that's only good news for countries like PNG, that we can get large bulk amounts of solar quite cheap. We've got Chinese suppliers trying to offload, their modules, their batteries, all of their equipment, even their electric vehicles now. And that's been complemented by, unreliable grids that continue to deteriorate the costly and unpredictable price of diesel and fossil fuels, and the rapid scaling of commercial industrial rooftops, mini grids, and pay-as-you-go technology models. So I think the lesson here is that when prices fall and that the policy friction is low, the markets will move very fast. So, if you give them opportunity and you remove the obstacles, they will just dive in there and they will eat up all of this low-cost panels, and it goes in very fast. The risk of that is, with such a huge amount of bulk stuff coming in, you can get potential for low-quality equipment to be imported. The operation and maintenance of these projects may not be able to keep up with the enormous levels of imports. And of course, something we always consider is e-waste. All of the panels that may be used, maybe not now, but maybe in 10 to 15 to 20 years, how are we going to deal with those panels? And probably on a shorter timeline is how do we deal with the lithium batteries that makes all of this possible, and the e-waste such as the inverters and other electronics. But the opportunity here is that you can build tens of thousands of installer jobs. For PNG, I think what we need to do is we need to lock in the financing channels. We need to enforce the quality standards through ANIST and customs. And we need to establish right now, we can't wait on this, is maintenance and recycling programs. Because as you see in Africa, once the pricing and the policy has aligned, the demand just can jump overnight, can go very, very fast. So in terms of PNG, what do we have in terms of financial support? Well, Martin and I are proposing, some ideas here, some smart subsidies for poor households. So we're talking about vouchers, talking about grants. This is, held back a little bit by one of the challenges in PNG is establishing identity. The national ID program, needs to to expand faster and work better. And so people can have access to their financial identities, bank accounts, this sort of thing. And, you know, again, we need to expand the microfinance loans with support from donors, from the PNG electrification program or other donors, the multilateral development banks. We need to strengthen the pay-as-you-go solar and, you know, join up with the telecom companies, you know, your Digicels, your Telecom, your Vodafone, B-Mobile, that sort of thing. These are very important partners in electrification. And we need to tap climate finance. So your Green Climate Fund, your Adaptation Fund, all of the sort of the big UNFCCC Paris Agreement financial mechanism funds, these need to get more involved essentially. And then just on the right there, I've got a couple of logos of organisations that are active in PNG. You've got the Green Finance Centre, which is embedded in the Bank of PNG, and that's working on, at the moment, a green taxonomy. We had a green taxonomy workshop yesterday to help establish, so I guess, some rules and definitions around what is green. Then you've got the European Union program, Get Invest. I think Get stands for Global Energy Transformation, and that provides financial services to companies or project developers that want to build clean energy projects, and also they need the financial support to get there, to connect them to investors. Full disclosure, I'm actually the PNG liaison for Get Invest. So if you want some support from the European Union to try and access services and finance, you can go through me for that. And then we have the AIFFP, Australian Infrastructure Financing Facility for the Pacific. As the name suggests, it's part of the Australian government's, or it's supported by the Australian government, and that's has done a few projects already in PNG. And some things we need to build, apart from financial capacity, is the technical and institutional. You know, I sort of covered this a little bit in the previous slide when we talked about how successes in our Pacific neighbours. We need to fund these training programs for solar technicians and village electricians. We've had some success with the Lighting Global or the Verisol standards that have been here for a few years. I think IFC had a bit of input to set that up, but that's now it's a very good catalogue of what is reliable and quality products that you can use and invest in. We do need to establish some regional service hubs and mobile maintenance teams. At the moment, I think a lot of the solar developers, the companies, are based in Port Moresby, and they do, I know at least for my company, we have delivered projects around PNG, but it would probably be much more practical if you had your local solar technician, solar installer based, you know, in your regional capital, your provincial capital, rather than having to contact Port Moresby and hope you get a response. And I think it would be really important that donor-funded projects get on board with this as well. And it's not just a case of let's, you know, fund a mini grid or let's fund a solar farm. We need to fund at least, you know, 5 years of O&M for that as well. So it's not just build it and walk away, because we've seen a lot of disasters that way, but build it and install the technical capacity to run it and make sure that that is there, present and active for at least 5+ years. In terms of what we need from society, well, we need policy and regulation that suits what we're trying to do. And that's, you know, on the government there. As I mentioned earlier, the NEA, National Energy Authority, has an off-grid regulation, but it hasn't been passed yet by Cabinet. So we're waiting on that, and I think that would be make a big difference. We need to reform the PPL monopoly. Currently, you know, PNG Power Limited is the only electricity supplier here, and maybe that we need to reconsider, is that the best structure for PNG? And if we wanted to change it, how would we do that? And Professor Davies actually wrote a separate paper about how to do that, which I won't go into now, but there's options on the table there, but it needs the political appetite and the will to do it, and it's questionable if we have seen that yet. Of course, we need to ensure that systems that we do install in remote areas are grid compatible if the grid does extend to where they will reach eventually. And we need to support community ownership. And I've got there on the right, this is a project that my company did in Central Province a while ago, and we built on the roof of the church there. And one of the reasons we did that is because you go to, I guess, a rural community, and generally you'll find that the largest roof in that community is pretty much always the church, the local church. And it is one of the, I guess, few institutions you can find in rural areas that you will have reliable power structure and establishment of, lines of succession, so that that the church is there now, it will be there in 5 years, it'll be there in 20 years, and you can have confidence that if you work with them, that they will be present in decades to come. Okay, so the development implications of adopting and moving on with this solar, a decentralised solar program is that we do need the donors, the government and the private sector to all align. We need to be working together with the same goals, the same strategy. If everyone's doing different things, different directions, it's a huge problem. We've seen a little bit of that with the PNG electrification program, where we had, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, the USA and PNG, nominally working all towards the same thing, but there was maybe a deficit of high-level coordination for that. So the various donor partners tended to do their own thing, and that's not to blame them at all. This was, I guess, PNG needed to take control of that a little bit, and that didn't happen for various reasons. So it probably wasn't as effective as it could have been. We need to de-risk the household adoption of solar through finance and subsidies. The households are, they're our main target. They're our audience. They're our market. They're the people that we need to reach, the people that we need to give the ability to install and adopt this technology. And it needs the technical ecosystem, the regulations, or the socio-economic and technical environment, basically the enabling environment of everything that needs to go ahead. And without sort of all of these things happening all together, it's going to be very hard to make a successful program. So I have here a model that we did, Martin and I, with I guess we got the assistance of one of our colleagues, Garrick, who initially did this for Bangladesh. We looked at it and we tweaked it a bit and changed it a bit and decided, can we do something similar like this for Papua New Guinea? I won't go into too much detail, but basically you have the blue squares there, all the different stakeholders, and the arrows between them show that how they interact with each other, how they support each other, and how they need to sort of all play a role to be establish a successful sector. And then you see on the right there is a list of what does the industry want. We want foreign exchange relief, which is a whole other story. We need clear regulations, which I mentioned, tariff reform, which I think is important. The PNG power tariff hasn't been reformed for a decade plus. And then we need to increase the digital infrastructure, the bank's population, the skilled workforce, and the public sector guarantor, which I've mentioned a lot in some of the earlier slides. So in my closing message, how are we going for time, Bobby? Are we all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the closing message is that the grid is not going to get us to 70%. We can't do this by growing PNG power. We can barely keep the lights on in Port Moresby at the moment. I came from my office where we've been running on generator for most of the week. Decentralised solar, if we choose to adopt it, it's the fastest, cheapest, more resilient way to do things. You can do it with batteries and PV modules that completely eliminate the need to build a big grid and poles and wires and get access to land, maintain it. It rules out all of that stuff. But we need our development partners, our aid programs, our multilateral development banks to they need to enable this financial capacity policy nexus. So they need to work with the PNG government, work with the private sector, work with the financial sector, and to build an enabling environment that is focused on getting this decentralised solar program underway. And, you know, we've got to understand that electrification is not just a nice to have, it's a huge development, diplomatic and economic opportunity. You give people electricity, they will change their world. They will, you know, you build an economy, you build education, you build health. All of this stuff is electrification is a critical part of it all. So with that said, I've come to the final slide here. We do have a Solar Energy Association. I think Andrew mentioned I'm the president. If you take your phone and you open the camera on your WhatsApp app, you take a picture of the QR code there, you can join our group. And, you know, we have a very active and lively discussion there most days. And you know, you're welcome to come and join. But with that said, I hope that everything I said was kind of clear and understood, and the context was appropriate. And now I'm happy to take Q&A, but maybe I'll, if Professor Martin Davies is online, if he has anything to add, as he was the co-author of this paper.
No, hi Christian. No, that was great. Nothing to add. Thanks for offering that. But that was great. Yep, good.
Thanks, Martin. So yeah, like I'm happy to take Q&A if if there's any questions already, or the MC wants to make an intervention.
So we got about 8 more minutes for questions, so we can, for those attending online, can post your question or just raise your hand, and also for those in person. So Q&A is open now.
I can't see if there's any questions, but
Hello.
Yes, carry on.
Hello, can you hear me?
yes, we can. Dr. Billy.
Yes, I'm calling from Port Moresby. Thank you, Christian. I think you are well aware last year when I was at the USA PEP program, we did a presentation on decentralized electricity supply policy. So the emphasis was in 2 parts. First part was both on-grid and off-grid. The isolated grids, the PPL isolated grids, so-called C centers, they are also referred to as on-grid because they are managed and operated by PPL. So the idea behind the policy for on-grid was to see if PPL can concentrate more on the Ramu and the Port Moresby grid, and to some extent the diesel grid, but open up the isolated grids to private sector participation. And you can look at various models. A concession model is one, and maybe a PPP arrangement between maybe the provincial government and private sector operator, reputable private sector operator. That's for on-grid. And I think off-grid, as you present, these are basically areas where PPL is not operated, and more so the rural areas of Papua New Guinea. I think for off-grid, we only have regulations for systems up to 1 megawatt, but there's nothing in place for anything beyond 1 megawatt. So we don't have a policy direction or regulations to help us with the off-grid deployment of solar, or I might say, while this presentation is focused on solar, I think there's a potential for mini hydros in Papua New Guinea. I don't want to at this stage talk about wind or other type of renewable energy. So I think I quite agree with the presentation as it is in Papua New Guinea's case. I think NEA, the regulator and the policy maker in the energy sector, is very slow. As I said earlier, we still do not have regulations for systems higher than 1 megawatt. And the tariff policy that they have at the moment doesn't really help if PPL for on-grid, if PPL agreed and KCH agreed for us to move into concession models for the isolated grids, the regulations that we have in place won't be able to support that direction. So with that, can I ask the presenter and anybody else in the room, or even Professor Davies, your views about, Christian is more familiar with our presentation last year about the policy that was being promoted by the USAID PEP program, IFC and NEA. I know that the policy is still alive. It has not been progressed to date. So I just want to get a feedback on the decentralized electricity supply policy.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Billy. You made a very good point that PPL is making, probably some decent income from its main grids, but the C centres are losing money, opportunities. So I think any sort of privatisation or unbundling of PPL needs to spin off these C centres, these regional and provincial capitals, to privatise those first. And then I think your question was about the NEAT program, which I think is a pretty good one, but it still hasn't really been implemented very much. It's the National Energy Access Transformation, I think it is, NEAT. My understanding is they've identified some areas to invest in some solar farms, but as far as I know, they haven't started construction or indeed commissioned anything there yet. But look, it's progress. It's in the right direction. I think it's using the right ideas, the right technology, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how the NEAT program continues.
Hey, Christian, we've had one come in online. I'm just going to read it out for you if that's all right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so this question comes from Molly Fong, who has asked how people who are outside PNG but doing work in PNG and who want to be involved in helping bring solar power to the people of Papua New Guinea, how they can best get involved in helping that happen.
Look, it's not a closed market. I think, I know Molly, I believe Molly's in Fiji and has already been doing some very good work in Bougainville, amongst other places. I'm not really an expert to give advice here because I'm in PNG, working in PNG, so I haven't had to confront that particular issue. But I believe, under the Melanesian Spearhead Group arrangement, the ability to trade and do business across the different Melanesian countries and within the region, has removed some obstacles to do that. So I think it's possible and definitely preferable that we would get developers, investors who at least have some cultural context and a little bit of understanding of how things work in the region, if not Papua New Guinea. So, but yeah, look, Molly, stay in touch with the regional offices for the PNG electrification partners. So your Australian High Commission, well, not USAID anymore, but I think New Zealand and JICA and those are still very active, and particularly the the MDBs, so your World Bank, your Asian Development Bank, they're putting out tenders all the time. They're looking for people to come in and do work. So, you build a network and have a connection with the international partners, I would say, if you're outside the country and looking to invest. And also stay abreast of what's going on with PPL and the government. They have really, particularly PNG Power, has upped its game digitally recently. They have the active WhatsApp group that tells you where the latest blackout is. Much too active. But they're also, they have websites. They reasonably good at responding online. And I got to say, PNG is one of the few countries left that has a thriving print newspaper industry, and a lot of this stuff is advertised in the print newspapers. I don't know if there's a way around that to get your hands on the black and white papers, but you see a lot of that. So thanks for your question, Molly.
Thanks, Christian. We also have another one over here at the ANU end, if that's all right, if we've got time for that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Christian. Great presentation. Thank you. A quick question about the on-grid solar. I had conversation with a few friends in home, and they wanted to install solar, but also they were saying that they are not allowed by PNG Power to install solar. Can you elaborate on that? How is the situation? Because there's high potential for private investment.
Yeah, sure. So the regulations in Papua New Guinea are that PNG Power is the sole monopoly provider of electricity. And what that means in practical terms is that only PNG Power can buy and sell electricity, or can sell it to customers. So you can't come in, you can build your own solar projects and you can make electricity and you can use that electricity. You can't sell that electricity to a third party. Only people allowed to do that are PPL, and they have an exclusion zone around their grid. So I think it's a 10-kilometre exclusion zone from any PNG Power assets, so any power lines. Within 10 kilometres of that power lines, only PNG Power is allowed to do business. That is not always well understood. People think that it's a ban on solar, it's a ban on making your own power. It's not really a ban. It's what it is you can't trade electricity. Only PPL is allowed to do that. And PPL hasn't always gone out of their way to make this nuance clear. I would say that if your colleague or your friend wants to do projects in PNG, just make sure that they're not selling electricity. They can sell solar panels, they can sell a system, and they can even lease a system, but they would have to give the power away for free.
We've had another question on the Zoom chat, if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is from Tony Pecora. They ask, can the private sector accomplish the goals of PNG electrification without the need of government support using a model of household standalone systems and pay-as-you-go technology? Does PNG really need a rural grid?
I would say that's very hard without government support and without some sort of risk amelioration for the private sector. Like if you just go and start selling household systems with batteries and solar panels to thousands of households, firstly, they can't really afford it. So you need some sort of financial support for them. And if you give them financial support, then you're adopting some risk from that as well. What happens if they can't make repayments? What happens if the pay-as-you-go model, isn't appropriate? So here is where you need the government and maybe the development partners to come in and to give some sort of risk assurance there. And, to do this, even, without any other sort of government intervention, we do need government regulations. At the moment, it's not clear what is or isn't allowed in terms of certain parts of the solar sector. And this really gives the kiss of death for investors. If they don't really understand what the rules are, then the chances are that if they go and put a million kina into a mini grid without a clear understanding of the rules, then maybe once those rules are correctly explained, their mini grid might not be compliant, and then they risk their investment. So we do really need the government to, at the bare minimum, put in some regulations. It doesn't even need to be really great regulations. They can be maybe not the friendliest, but they need to be reliable. They need to be consistent so that people can plan around them. And at the moment, there is sort of a lack of that. Okay. Any questions in the room? I see we have a few people. Yes, sir.
You said something about the price of the quantities of solar panels now being used by like China, possibly eventually now. So it comes like probably. Do we have any regulations on the standards or types of solar panels or solar electric instead? Maybe can allow it to the country so that we can have in terms of having e-waste and stuff. So really, we can limit that. Do we have any at the moment?
Yeah, okay, so that's a great question. The question was about do we have standards for importing of solar products like panels, batteries, inverters? For smaller systems, we have the Verisol, but I don't know if that's a standard. I think that's more of a guideline. So you can bring in import equipment that is not great quality and could contribute to the e-waste problem. So one of the things we're doing as an industry is we're trying to work with PNG Customs and with NIST, which is the National Industrial Standards Group. Basically, it's the regulator for industrial and appliances, and to get some regulations around what is allowed to be imported. Because we have seen, I think, anecdotally in previous years, when it comes up to election time, political candidates may go to China, buy a couple of containers of the cheapest solar lights that they can find. They distribute it amongst their electorate. It'll, light up the place until one day after the election, and then you've got a bunch of e-waste. And that's not something we want to encourage. It sort of kills confidence in the industry, and it hurts the growth of the sector. So yeah, look, standards are important. And this is another area where the government needs to be involved, where PNG Customs and where NIST needs to take the lead. I see we have a hand up online, Fabian White. You're on mute, Fabian, if you want to ask a question.
Sorry, am I audible now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep, sorry. Hi, Christian, it's Fabian. Thank you for the presentation. Great insights. I currently work with Digicel in Papua New Guinea, and from previous experiences, I've seen how solar and microfinancing and the telecoms industry, go together hand in hand. And as an industry, we are equally reliant on power as well. And my question to you is, how do you think the current set of telecom operators could, add value or collaborate to drive this further within the country?
Okay, so I believe the question is about how can the current telecommunications stakeholders, your Digicels and your other telecom companies, drive this forward. Look, it's a little bit outside my expertise here. I'm not a telecoms expert or a markets expert, but I think in our paper we looked at the case study of East Africa. Look, it's quite a different context there because much larger populations, slightly higher level of development, and you've got countries all bordering each other. But I think there's some lessons to learn from East Africa. I think we need to really push this national ID program. We need people, to really be able to establish their identities, tie that to a digital identity, tie that to a financial identity. This is the way to do it. And I think if people had those things, then you would see it would be a lot easier and more practical to get these mobile money programs up and running. So, it's not something I think that, or at least from my perspective, that I believe that the telecom companies, your Digicells or your B-Mobiles, Vodafones can do by themselves. Again, you need to create the enabling environment. You need people with a financial identity, with a digital identity, these sort of things to really activate the mobile money sector.
Thank you.
We have, I believe, one more question in the room.
So my question is, in one of the previous slide, you made a policy recommendation on after it was just commissioned, it should be running like research and maintenance for 5 years.
Yes.
So the policy is very that's a very good recommendation, especially in countries like this. Most of the after project completion, there's no operation and maintenance plan. So in your study, did you come across comparative studies on which type of energy is what's required to maintain and operate, like say, for 10 years? I mean, apart from solar, would you compare that to hydro? If there's an on the transmission line.
Yeah, the question is about the 5 years of O&M and that which is the cheapest source of energy, considering that, including the O&M. Is solar the cheapest, or is hydro quite cheap? My understanding is that in terms of long-term costs, you really can't beat hydro, especially at large scale. You're talking about cents or fractions of a cent per kilowatt hour. Solar is competitive and the costs are driving down lower. I guess the advantage with solar is that, as I mentioned earlier, it's modularity. You can build it at small scale to medium to enormous scale. Whereas with hydro, I think, and again, I'm not a hydro expert, but I think you get the best returns at large scale hydroelectricity projects. So your larger dams and stuff, which come with significant capital investment and potentially environmental and social consequences as well that solar doesn't always face. But yeah, it's hard to beat hydro, especially in a country like Papua New Guinea. Lots of mountains, lots of rain, but it does have certain socio-economic challenges that maybe solar doesn't have.
I've had one more question just come through online. Just before I read it out though, could I just ask Christian, is that email address on the slide, is that okay for people to use to contact you if they come up with a question after this session?
Sure, yeah, they can email me.
Okay, no worries. So the question that I have comes in from Mary Johns. They're asking, hi, it's reported in the Post-Courier that the NEA launched 5 new policies, which also included a solar energy policy. What key matters were raised in that policy document?
Yeah, so this was really, I only got a copy of this yesterday, so it's very, very recent. And I believe they released a solar policy, a hydroelectricity policy, a bioenergy policy, wind power policy, and they wanted to release a women in energy policy, but that has been deferred and is hopefully coming soon. I've only had a very superficial look at the solar policy they released, and it is kind of, it's quite a high level guideline. It is not something that I would say, oh, this is, a roadmap for how to build rooftop solar for households or companies. It's more of a guideline for, okay, if you're a solar investor that builds solar farms, that does large scale, solar infrastructure, then how do you engage and interact with the grid? So yeah, it's good progress. It's a step in the right direction. But it does need a bit of, there are some gaps there that need further regulations to really help establish a proper rooftop or household C&I solar sector. Excuse me? Yeah, no, I was consulted by NEA. I've had a bit to do with them. I'm not a co-author of the policy, but I do speak with them regularly, and they engage with the solar sector. So, this wasn't done in a vacuum. But again, it is quite a high-level policy document that they released, and it's probably not going to make a huge difference to some of the sector stakeholders. Okay, and I think I'm getting the signal from Bobby here, who is going to step in.
Right, so time has caught up with us, so we'll stop here. Christian's email is there, so if you have any questions, you can email him at any time. And let's thank Chris and Martin for the interesting study and presentation.
Thank you.
Just before you go, the next seminar for next month will be on the topic modeling development goals for PNG. And there is a study by IFPRI and Department of National Planning and Monitoring. So will be an interesting one. And we look forward to you guys joining again next month. And thanks for attending today.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, guys.